it's time to invite the second speaker of our session, the Céline Castets-Renard. Céline is a full-time professor of law at the Toulouse Capital University and the junior member of the IUF. This is Institute University of France, Céline? Yeah, okay, it's Institute University of France. She is a director of assistant of the IRDEIC. This is a research institute in European International and Comparative Law. Yeah? No? No, oh, sorry. So maybe shortly you can introduce by yourself, would be better.
Thank you all for having me. I would like to thank the organizer for this very wonderful conference here. And as you mentioned, Emil, I'm Céline Castets-Renard. I'm a law professor at the University of Ottawa. And I'm research holder on two different chairs. One is in Ottawa, Accountable AI in a Global Context, and another one is law trust and social trust and accountability of AI in ANITI, which is the AI Institute of Toulouse, Artificial and Natural Intelligence Toulouse Institute. And I would like, first of all, focus on the question of acceptability of AI and social trust. And we will talk more about the question of acceptability, because AI is not only trust, it's also what we would like to have as human and collectively as a society. Firstly, I would like to recognize the benefits of AI, but I'm a legal scholar, so I'm more focused on the problems and the social risks. That's the reason why today I would like only to talk about the social impact and negative impact. But of course, I'm aware of the benefits of AI, and I really would like to encourage good AI, if I could say that. And regarding social impact, we could have two different answers. And today I would like to show that this answer are the same pieces, the same coin, and two different faces of the coin, but these two faces go all together. Ethic and AI law are very common. And regarding social impact, we have a lot of literature regarding the risk. For instance, we talk about discrimination with AI, racial discrimination, gender discrimination, discrimination based on a lot of criteria such as poverty. Of course, we talk about opacity and also surveillance. And most of this discrimination and criteria of discrimination are very often interrelated, and very often we have intersectionality problems. For instance, we could think about the work of Joy Bulamwini, who works at the MIT Media Lab, and she shows several problems with facial recognition, especially for Black women. She shows that the score rate is higher for women and higher for Black people. And if you consider Black women, the score of the rate score is higher, and we have to consider this all these criteria altogether. And I would like also focus on and highlight the problem of surveillance, and especially regarding the women and the feminist literature. We know very well today the question of over-representation, or the fact that sometimes we have not enough data regarding specific population, regarding women or ethnic specific population, and sometimes the result, the consequence is the output of the results, the decision making are not very fit not very well for women if women are underrepresented. But we could have also specific question of surveillance. We have to think about economic surveillance and capitalism surveillance, like Zubov showed it, but also state surveillance. And if we consider facial recognition, we know today that this kind of technology are very interesting for states, but we also we also need to ask the question of the acceptability of AI and the condition of this acceptability. And regarding women, I would like to highlight the fact that if the society change, the technology can change as well, or can be used for specific use, which can be discussed. If I think about the Roe v. Wade case, the overturn of Roe v. Wade case by the U.S. Supreme Court, this case was decided in June this year to overturn the question of abortion for women, the right of abortion for women. And after this decision, we have seen a lot of technology to surveil the women who decide to go to the clinic to get an abortion. And I think that is exactly what I would like to mention when I think and when I talk about acceptable AI. And I think we have to pay attention to this kind of use, and we have to decide collectively what kind of use are acceptable and what kind of use are not. Of course, the European Commission, we are in Europe, we are not in the US, we are not in China, but I think the question is a very relevant question everywhere, the question of acceptability. And in INITI, we have this kind of discussion. And if we have a legal approach regarding this ethical question and social question, of course, we have some answer or some beginning of answer in the European Commission and in EU law. Several years ago, we have enacted the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, to protect personal data. We have a strategy of data, which was mentioned this morning, with two very important regulations: data governance, to organize the use of AI and the sharing of AI with stakeholders, and the condition of access and sharing. We also have Data Act to have an access to better data in order to build a better AI. And I think we have to balance between trade secrets and sharing of data, and it's very challenging. But I think we need to share this data to have a better quality and quantity as well. And we also have other regulations, DMA, Digital Market Act, and DSA, Digital Services Act, which are more focused on content moderation and big tech companies and online use of data, but also AI, because we know that content moderation mostly moderated by algorithm and human as well, but mostly algorithm. And we also know that market powers and behavior in order to block the market to avoid the competition are also designed in algorithm. And DMA and DSA try to address this kind of issue. And of course, we have the AI regulation and machinery regulation, which has been published in April 2021. These regulations are not yet enacted, and currently we have a lot of discussion and compromise. So today I just want to present the proposal of the European Commission, but this text is still evolving. In this AI Act, we try to address different kind of problems, opacity problems, and predictability, autonomy, which creates safety risk, fundamental rights risk, of course, enforcement risk, and legal uncertainty, mistrust, and fragmentation of the market. And the first answer before the AI Act was the guidelines from the high-level expert group. These guidelines have been mentioned this morning. And these guidelines focus on key seven key requirements. But firstly, I would like to say that most of them are already rights and fundamental rights, so it's not really new. It's just a way to say AI is not a part of the law, and AI, of course, AI system has to respect the law, and especially fundamental rights such as equity, and privacy and accountability, especially. So it's ethic, but it's already law, and we will see that in the AI Act, we could find these several key requirements. So it means there are interrelation between ethics and AI ethic and AI law. So the second step was the AI Act, published in April 2021 by the European Commission, Vestager Commissioner and Michel Breton Commissioner. And in this AI Act, we have a very broad definition of AI, and I'm sure most of you are computer scientists, data scientists, or AI specialists, and I'm sure you would be very maybe shocked or surprised to see this definition. This is the Annex 1 of the AI Act, and as you can see, it's not only AI in a very precise definition, and especially deep learning and machine learning approach, but it's also statistical approach. And some of you could think, oh, it's not AI, but from a legal and social perspective, we have to keep in mind that the goal here is to protect the population, and sometimes automated decision systems are not AI at all, but are very dangerous for the society or for individuals. So I think that's very important not to be focused on the technical scientific definition, but let's say a social definition of it regarding the consequences for the people. As you know, this AI regulation is a risk-based approach, meaning we have four different levels, but minimal risk, there is no requirements, only a code of conduct and encouragement to take a framework, a voluntary framework. And I think the two higher levels, unacceptable and high risk level, are more important. Unacceptable, it means we do not have to consider, we do not have to develop and deploy this kind of system, and high risk system means you can deploy this kind of system, but you have to fulfill requirements. And also this regulation is based on use cases, and you can imagine that if you do not have the use case, even if it could be a high-risk case, if it's not mentioned, it means you are not in a high-risk system, so you are only in a limited-risk system. So if it's not previously mentioned by the regulation, it's almost free. And I think that's the main problem of this regulation. It's, let's say, to focus on specific use cases. And of course, you cannot think about all the risk, all the high-risk system which could exist in reality. And just to mention very quickly the unacceptable risk, and just to focus on the ethical problem of some of them, such as subliminal manipulation, exploitation of vulnerable groups, and also social scoring. I think we have all in mind China example, which is not an example. But as you can see, the proposal is limited here because, as you can see, because the social scoring is only focused on public authorities, but I think private authorities are dangerous as well, and I think the general purpose social scoring has to mention private authorities and not only public authorities. And the last one is real-time remote biometric identification, let's say facial recognition. And facial recognition by law enforcement agencies is not permitted in public spaces, but we have a lot of exceptions, 3 broad exceptions here, and I think we have to pay attention regarding this risk of state surveillance I mentioned before. And as I said, this regulation is a use case basis and a specific use case. In the Annex 3, we have an Annex 2, there are other cases, but Annex 3, we have 8 cases, and each of them are very specific. And we can see that this list is aware of the social problems I mentioned and the literature I mentioned previously, but it means it's only focused on the problem we see today, but not very, we have no way of evolution, only the fact that the European Commission can add more system in this list, but we risk to have a gap here between the real risk and the reaction of the Commission if we face a new risk, and we will face a new risk for sure. And also, I would like to say that there is a room of improvement here because if use case based and it's not considering general purpose AI systems, and I think we could have a lot of issues with this kind of system, and we will have already issues with this kind of system. So I think there is a limit here with the way of writing the proposal of the AI Act. You have already seen this slide from the DG Connect this morning, and just to mention the fact that in the requirements for high-risk AI system, these requirements are related to ethics, and you can, as you can see, we can see again the 7 key requirements of the high-level group, the guidelines of the high-level groups, and you can see again the question of human oversight, transparency, robustness, and the question of data, and the question of over-representation of several specific population, over or under-representation. This kind of risk are mentioned, and we have some provisions to try to avoid this risk, but we could, I don't want to enter into the detail, but if we discuss the details of these provisions, the risks are not always avoided. To conclude, I just want to say that AI, ethics and law are interrelated, and I think now we have to consider that we talk about ethics of AI, but we have to say law of AI today, because or AI law, because this AI Act is almost enacted, not almost, but will be enacted soon. And we have to consider the fact that it's not only a question of voluntary, or but now these requirements are mandatory, and we have to document what kind of system we have been designed, and what kind of measures have been made to avoid the discrimination, for instance, the biases, for instance. That's the first point. So second point, the EU law, AI EU law is a model for other countries, and we can see a Brussels effect as we have seen with the GDPR. And I think that maybe it's something, it's a constraint, it's something which constrains the stakeholder in the EU, but it's also an opportunity for them. And because we have, let's say, we are in advance in consideration of other countries, and we have a common framework, and this is not the case everywhere. I come from Canada, and that's the same in the US. And in the federal system, we have a lot of regulation, and it's a mess. So I think it's a very good opportunity for the businesses and for researchers to have only one framework, one legal framework to consider. And the third point I would like to mention is the law, of course, the legal framework is something which constrains, but it's also certainty. And I think that's easier to have certainties in business and in research and innovation rather than something vague and maybe we will have a sanction but we don't know. I think that's better to know exactly where we are and where we would like to be. And also, I would like to follow up the things that Isabelle said this morning regarding the innovation. There are some provisions regarding innovation in the AI Act, and especially the regulatory sandboxes. And I think the researchers have to consider this opportunity and have to use it for advancing the research and the knowledge about AI. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We have no questions from Slido, so I would like to ask you, to the audience, if there are some questions.
Thank you very much. So one thing that I'm curious about, because you said that this is not regulating technology, but still it's all dependent on this definition of a particular technology. So it seems to me that it's exactly what it's doing. It's regulating one particular technology, not actually the behavior or the undesired outcomes that we want to prevent. So that's one part. And the second part is, since you said you want a broad definition, why don't we just say software? What do these definitions add on top of that? Because if we include a third category, it basically includes all software we have ever built and ever will be built. Including hardware. Yeah, and hardware too, yes, of course. Oh, sorry.
Two good questions, thank you. The last one, there are still discussion on it and compromise, and I'm sure this definition won't be the last one, the final one. So probably it will be narrower because of what you mentioned, because there are a lot of criticisms regarding the fact it's almost all software. So that's not possible. So probably it will change. But once again, I would like to focus on the question of social impact. And I think it's not a question of software or not, AI or not, deep learning or not, machine learning or not, supervised or not. It's a question of what the purpose of the system and the impact on population and on individuals. That's the second question. The first one, I think there is a mix between, it's a comprehensive regulation with a very broad definition of AI, but at the same time, it's specific, it's use case specific. So I think it's a big strange, and there is a contradiction in the way of the European Commission would like to regulate this field. But in comparison with the US or with Canada, it's still broader, because if you consider, for instance, state regulation in the US, you will see it's very sectorial. It's a very sectorial approach. So it's still a mix between both in the EU, but broader than the others, let's say.
Because, I mean, I fully agree with you. I think we should, I agree that I think it's more the undesirable outcomes that we want to prevent. But then the consequence of that would be that the definition of AI is irrelevant because it doesn't matter how or what technology you use. So it seems to be contradictory in that. But then my follow-up question would be, how do we achieve this legal certainty? Because, I mean, we see with GDPR that it's extremely difficult to interpret GDPR, and we see that different member states are interpreting it vastly different. And so it seems to me that this, I mean, again, I agree with the intention to achieve this legal certainty, but it seems to be very far away from achieving that.
It takes time. And GDPR, it's only to 2016 and an entry into force in 2018. So it's only 4 years ago. So it's a short. Yes, and also we already had the directive in 1995, I know. But my first answer will be a legal one, and the second a political one. The legal one is we are supposed to have an authority, once again, a competent authority to organize different interpretation, and that's the same model for all these regulations, so we will see. And the political, the other answer, the political one, is about the fact that the European Commission would like to be the first one to have this comprehensive regulation. And I think it's important to consider the standards and to build the standards on AI, even if it's imperfect. It will count, and it will. And today, all the other countries consider the EU, and we are the first one, and we are always the more let's say. Focus on the values, fundamental rights. I know it's a political discourse. I know it's imperfect, but it's important regarding the market and so the economic perspective, but also in a geopolitical strategy. So it's not only regulation and effectivity of regulation. It's also a question of discourse, of speech. For the others.
Thank you for your discussion. We are under time press, so other questions could be given to Céline during the coffee break.